Well, hello, it's Sam, and I'm here with SatGuru Bodhinatha of the Kauai Hindu Monastery. He's the head teacher and spiritual teacher, the head spiritual teacher here of Kauai's Hindu Monastery, and that's part of the Nandinata Guru Parampara, correct?
Yes.
And we're going to be talking about some, talking about the monastery here, and Bodhinatha is going to be talking about the story of the ashram here and all of the work that the ashram does. They publish Hinduism Today, and well, I'll let you take it from there. Would you like to? What would you like to say about the work here of Kauai's Hindu Monastery?
Kauai's Hindu Monastery serves two functions, and quite often we get asked the question, well, why are you in such a remote place? You know, here we are, the most remote landmass in the world.
Beautiful, by the way.
And how many Hindus are there in Hawaii? Very few. So what are we doing here? Well, our Guru chose the property back in 1969, and we moved in here in 1970. So we've been here for 44 years, long time. And every morning we get up and we come out and we look at our beautiful scenery, and we never tire of it.
It's beautiful. Wish you all could see what we can see right over the fall there.
So in Hinduism, there's two kinds of temples or two kinds of sacred places. You want one that's nearby so you can go there every week to worship, to meditate. But you also have distant ones. The most distant one is the pilgrimaging to Mount Kailash. That's a very distant one. Or in India, if you're in the south or in the middle, going all the way up to Rishikesh. So these are sacred places at a distance that you don't go to that often. Generally once a year is the most common you go on pilgrimage, but even less to the same place. So that's our primary, that's one of our two functions here, is to serve as a place of pilgrimage.
And one thing I'll just say, one reason that I'm so attracted to this particular monastery is they perform pujas, like 8 pujas every day to Lord Shiva. This has been happening for...
Since 1973. Yeah.
So since 1973, 8 pujas per day to Lord Shiva, and the temple is always full with... can you explain how you run the temple and these pujas, and why around the clock?
Yes, I will. So our second purpose is the one you're alluding to now, and that's we function as a monastery. So it's a traditional monastery, and that we only have men here, and also it's not an ashram. We don't have family people staying here. So it's a traditional monastery for those who have taken vows. Even our guests, we have 3 resident guests don't stay in the monastery. They stay at a house a few blocks away. So it's strictly under strict rules. And the Guru Savaya Subramanya Swami wanted to make the temple he founded, which is called Kadovo Temple, the center of the monks' focus. And therefore he created what we call a 24-hour-a-day vigil schedule. So every 3 hours a different monk comes in the temple, starts with the puja, as you mentioned, and then meditates, studies scriptures, chants, and if it's at nighttime, tries to stay awake.
Right.
And so it starts at midnight, and then another monk comes in at 3 a.m., 6 a.m., and so forth. So why did he do it? He did it to make the temple really a high priority in the spiritual life of the monk. And it's a very strict discipline, so your main concern your whole day is getting to your vigil on time. And they've had a very simple way of making sure that happened. If you're even 1 minute late, you have to do another 3-hour vigil within the immediate 24-hour period. So that's a big commitment, to give up 3 hours of your extra 3 hours of your next planned day. So rarely is any monk late.
And if I may say, one of the things that also really intrigues me as a Jyotisha, one who understands and studies, the relevance of cosmic time, not just calendar time and spatial time, is the way, the sankalpa that each of the monks give before they do the puja.
Yes.
Not only talks about our physical space, like, specifically like we're in Hawaii, we're Kauai, we're near the, we're by this river, we're by this mountain. But then we get into the nakshatra, the tithi, the karana, the yoga, the nitya yoga, the specifics of sort of astral time and space, because we want to bring these divine beings, Lord Shiva, into this loka, into this realm, so that he can, work on different levels of our of our existence that's not just physical. So we have to call him in from those dimensions. I'm sorry if I didn't say that so well. Please say it better than me. But as an astrologer, thank you. But as an astrologer, I'm so intrigued and so happy to sit and listen to the karana and the tithi. And when you walk into the temple, there's a representation of the current sky on the floor right in front of you. So for those of you who are interested in astrology, it's really fascinating to enter a temple that has a representation of the sky sitting right there.
Well, yes, and one of the reasons it's there is to generate questions. And it does generate questions, and therefore, in a low-key way, we do teach about the basics of astrology because of the presence of that board and also, the sankalpa.
As a little kid in there, they trying to move around like, no. I was like, careful. So I think the kids really, really like it as well. And we have the upcoming MAKARA SANKRANTI, which is still celebrated often in India as a return of the light, which is the beginning of the northern course of the sun, which is actually something that is supposed to be, which actually occurs on the solstice. And it's another thing I love about this temple is you have been celebrating the correct Uttarayana at the correct time for years rather than at the incorrect time. And this mistake happened because back in like 400 AD, Varahamihira wrote in Brihat Samhita, he gives instructions about when the Uttarayana happens, when the northern course occurs. And at that time, a few thousand years ago, it happened, or about 1,500 years ago, it happened on the winter solstice using sidereal zodiac, but that was like 1,500 years ago. Now, when you have the MAKARA SANKRANTI using sidereal zodiac, it's in the middle of January, and the northern course happened 3.5 weeks ago.
Yes,
so you've all been doing it correctly for like 30 years, right?
A long time, yes. Well, it was one of the first realizations we had, and had the, I'd say, the courage to put forward. Because it is a minority opinion.
It's a minority opinion, and it still rubs people the wrong way. I still get a lot of feedback, like every year, when I bring this out. But again, because there's so much integrity in this temple, and because they start every puja and sankalpa with saying Uttarayana, like they start every puja saying what the ayana is. You can't mess it up here.
No, and it's particularly important in that you're supposed to do major ceremonies such as temple consecration in Uttarayana. And if you think it ends 3 weeks late, you can do ceremonies in July.
Exactly.
Where you should be stopping June 21st.
Exactly. This is where it also gets really difficult. Not only is the northern course, being celebrated later when it already happened a few weeks earlier, but in particular when you have the, when the southern course starts, you could be thinking it's still the northern course.
That's the problem.
That's the big problem as well.
Well, we think in a couple of hundred more years it'll start to get evident. When you're planting, when you should be harvesting.
Yeah, it ain't hurting us bad enough yet, right? Yeah. So, well, I thank you so much.
Well, my pleasure. Didn't ask me any hard astrology questions.
No.